Rudy, you have to unmute.
Zach,
Yeah, can you hear me, Rudy?
I can.
Okay, good. Okay, I think we have everybody now. All right, I guess we can call the meeting to order. Let me just read these opening announcements. Please take notice that in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6 et sec, and in consideration of Executive Order Number 103, issued by Governor Murphy on March 9, 2020, declaring a state of emergency in the state of New Jersey, the Planning Board of the Township of Wyckoff does hereby notify the public that to protect the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens, the meeting of the Zoning Board, or in the Planning Board, of the Township of Wyckoff, scheduled for Wednesday, July 8th, 2020, will be conducted virtually through Zoom technology, and it will be live streamed on the Township of Wyckoff's YouTube channel. The work session is scheduled for 7:30, and the public business meeting will begin at 8 p.m. These measures are implemented to allow members of the public to observe the meeting via live streaming and to provide the ability to comment during the periods for public comment during the meeting through Zoom telephone call-in technology. Joining the meeting by telephone will be utilized as security against the sharing of inappropriate video content. General instructions regarding access to the meeting is posted on the Wyckoff website's homepage at www.wyckoff-nj.com as a quote news item. The July 8, 2020 work session of the Wyckoff Planning Board is now in session. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting appears on our annual schedule of meetings. Copy of said annual schedule has been posted on the bulletin board in Memorial Town Hall. Copy has been filed with the Township Clerk, the Record, Ridgewood News, and the North Jersey Herald and News. All newspapers with general circulation throughout the Township of Wyckoff. At least 48 hours prior to this meeting, the agenda thereof was similarly posted, filed, and mailed to said newspapers. Members of the public are welcome to be present at this meeting. However, in accordance with Section 7A of the Open Public Meetings Act, participation on the part of the public at this meeting will not be entertained. Okay, can we have a roll call, Maureen, please?
Ms. Riotto? Mr. Riotto?
Yes, here.
Mr. Homechek?
Who's got to
Mr.
unmute?
Homechek?
Mike, are you on mute?
Mr. I
Here.
see. Mr. Fisher?
Here.
Mr. Siesma?
Here.
Mr. Boonstra?
Here.
Mr. Pervin?
Here.
Mr. Alexandru?
Here.
Mr. On?
Here.
Mayor Shanley?
Here.
Chairman Fortunato?
Here.
Not
Okay,
ready.
yeah, we're having some audio problems, so, some technical problems. Hopefully those won't continue.
I'm having a technical problem. I'm trying to connect us live to the YouTube, and it is not letting me do that. So that's a problem, which means the public is not viewing. I'm not getting the option to go to the YouTube stream.
Is the YouTube,
On my screen, it says live on YouTube.
So does mine.
But I have to connect the link to our township website. That is the problem. Hold on.
so there's no audio either right now, Maureen?
I don't know. I mean, it says we're live on YouTube, so if anyone goes directly to our YouTube site, it'll be okay, but I need to share a link to our township website. So you can carry on where it does say we're live on YouTube, but I need to connect that link to our website. So I'll mess with that if you carry.
Okay, you think it's okay? We continue? I mean, can the public We don't know if the public can hear us or not. Is that the issue?
Well, they can, it's directly to our township YouTube account,
All
but
right.
I need to put this link on our.
Guys, I can hear you. Yeah, I just dialed up on YouTube and you're in. We're live streaming on YouTube.
Okay, so carry on, and I'll work on linking it to our township website.
Oh, okay.
All right. If Maureen, if there's a problem and you want us to stop, just let me know, okay? And we'll try to hold up to make sure that at least the audio is going out. Okay. Well, hopefully those difficulties will clear up, guys. I hope everybody had a good July 4th weekend and everybody's doing well, their families. Let's get right into it. With regard to old business, we have the first item on the agenda is approval of the June 10th, 2020 work session and regular business minutes. Does anybody have any, first on the work session, anybody have any comments on those? I reviewed them. They looked fine to me. Anybody have any comments or changes? No?
Good.
Go ahead. Did you have a comment, Anthony?
No, it looks good.
Okay. And with regard to the regular business minutes, anybody have any comments, changes on those? Hearing no objection, can I have a motion to approve both the work session and regular business minutes for June 10th, 2020?
So moved.
That was Anthony.
Yep.
Who seconded? Mike Homachek.
Mike, second.
Mr. Riato,
Yes.
Mr. Homachak,
Yes.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes.
Isma,
Abstain?
Mr. Boonstra,
Yes.
Mr. Pervin,
Yes.
Mr. An,
Yes.
Mayor Shanley,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandru, you were absent, I believe.
I was absent.
Okay.
Abstain. Chairman Fortunato.
Yes. Okay, this is not on the agenda, but Mr. Hanley prepared a resolution on the Kale matter with regard to the 60-day delay on any enforcement proceedings after the denial of his application. So just to be consistent, I had excused myself from that matter, even though Mr. Whitaker has sent a letter in since saying that he has no objection to me being present or involved. I'm gonna hand that over to the vice chair, Mr. Pervin, just to handle that resolution and to call for a vote on that. So I step down as chair for the moment.
No problem. I'm sure we've all taken a look at it. Does anyone have any comments or changes with regard to the KL resolution?
I have two resolutions I'm looking at. I'm not sure which one is the last one. I'm gonna have to check the emails. I think the last one would be the appropriate one, right? Or is
Yes.
there three emails on this or just two? I have two
think-
for some reason.
I think there were two.
Two, okay, hold on. Let me see if I can see which one.
Do you want to take a few minutes to review that, Anthony?
No, I'm good. I just trying to figure out which one is which. Can you guys point out to me which one we should be looking at? Which one is the, just trying to figure, it looks like,
Says 60-day stay of enforcement.
yeah.
Now that's it. I sent it in on the 2nd,
Give me 1 second.
no,
It was sent to us on July 6th.
6th.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments or changes to it? If not, if someone wants to make a motion to approve the KL resolution,
Motion to approve the KO resolution as before you. Mike,
Second.
John,
Right.
Mr. Riato,
Yes.
Mr. Homachak,
Yes.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Se-
We're losing.
Mr. Seetsma,
Abstain.
Mr. Boonstra,
Yes.
Mr. Pervin,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandru,
Yes.
Mr. On,
Yes.
Mayor Shan,
Yes.
Chairman Fortunato.
Abstain. All right, thanks, Kevin.
No problem.
Okay, the next matter on the agenda is ordinance number 1917, which has been sent to the planning board for review and recommendation, if approved by, to send it back to the council. This has to do with parking, changing parking requirements. Rudy, why don't I throw this over to you, or do you want me to throw it to Rob Landell to discuss? Whichever you two feel is
If
appropriate.
Rob, with us, maybe it would be better, if, I mean, I could briefly go through it. Some businesses, which we can call, as per the ordinance, personal care type businesses, have run into a pretty conservative parking requirement, which was 1 for 200 square feet. I'm going to interrupt myself a minute. Is anyone else getting an icon of a telephone in the middle of their screen with a phone number on it?
Yes,
No?
two of them, actually.
Okay. I think one of them is Hank Grunwald. Is that someone trying to call in or what?
One of them may be Brigitte Bogart. She said she was going to call in. I'm not sure if that one of them's her.
I don't know. The one is 2595910 is Hank Grunwald. I don't know why he would be calling in, but anyway, back to the ordinance. So, and we've had conversations and outreach from some of the landlords. Could we have a look at this, because it becomes difficult because it's a very conservative parking requirement. So our planner, Bridget, has recommended that we change the designation from 1 to 200 to 1 to 50 square feet for these types of businesses. And I think it's well considered, because the business climate's changing, and of course we don't want empty storefronts in Wyckoff. We don't want a proliferation of these type of businesses, but on the other hand, we don't want empty storefronts either. So if Rob wants to add to that, that's where I sit.
Hey, Rudy, is it different than, you said it's actually being changed to 1 space per 200 from 1 space per 50, right?
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You're right, yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Rudy. Rob, Mr. Landell, you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think this is something we've been talking about for a while. The 1 per 50 was always too intense. And it just proved to be too much for any prospective business owner to provide. So it's something we've talked about for a long time. Now we're getting to it. My conversations I've had with Bridget, and I think you'll see in the reexamination report that you'll be discussing tonight, and probably the reexamination report that was done in 2010, we talked about attempting to simplify the different uses in town and the parking requirements. I think that'll probably be the next step. But this was the one I think that was, I won't say offensive, but more out of whack than any of the other parking requirements. So it makes sense to do this one now.
Yeah, I can speak, and several members of the board probably remember, we had an application where the strip mall near your office, the owner had to come in for an application. Somebody wanted to put a beauty salon in there, or a nail salon, I think. And they had to come in for a variance because of the parking requirements. And due to the length of time it took and the expense, I think they lost the tenant in the meantime. And I know that had been discussed at that time about changing that ordinance with regard to parking. So, I mean, from practical experience, it seems, from my point of view, to make a lot of sense.
I agree.
Anybody have any questions or comments to Mr. Landell or Mayor or Mr. Boonstra?
Just
Anybody
a
have-
question, and I don't have an intuitive sense about this. With one per 200 square foot, is that within the right consideration so that we're not having too few parking spots if more of these businesses come? I'm just curious about the density going, like a fourfold reduction in parking requirement.
One per 200 was the recommendation from the planner.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you.
Is that consistent, Rob, with what we have for other businesses now?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of the business, most businesses are 1 per 200.
Okay, so this kind of standardizes it with regard to these personal service businesses as well?
Right, and I think it's consistent with other towns in the area as well.
Okay, it was just a clarification question.
Thank you.
So if the ShopRite came before us, again, they would still have the same amount of space that they have now with this requirement?
The shop, right?
Yeah, I'm just interested. If something like that wanted to be built in town,
Well, this
would
only
that also
applies,
reduce it for them?
now this only applies to personal service businesses. So that would be nail salons, hair salons,
Okay,
haircutters. Is that correct, Rob?
That's correct. That's
Yeah.
correct.
So it's not changing the parking requirements with regard to any other businesses, only those type of businesses that were just mentioned where the parking
Okay, so-
restrictions were much greater. You needed a much higher intensity of parking spaces.
okay.
Okay, anybody have an objection to any recommendation we make to the council on this?
No.
No? Okay, hearing no objection, can I have a motion to recommend ordinance number 1917 to the council for approval?
Motion to recommend ordinance 1917 to the council for approval. It's Mike Comich.
Second.
Who seconded that?
Kevin Purvis.
Evan, okay.
Mr. Riato,
Yes.
Mr. Homachek,
Yes.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes.
Isma,
Glenn, are you there?
Mr. Sisma,
We seem to have lost Glenn.
I think he may be that number down there, 0929. We just can't hear him.
Glenn? No,
Glenn,
he was on the screen before. His name was on the screen. And now Tim is gone.
Tim's
Yeah.
here, he's back. All right, well, I guess we don't technically need Glenn on this vote.
Mr. Boonstra,
Yeah, yes.
Mr. Pervin,
Yes.
Mr. On,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandru,
Yes.
Mayor Shanley,
Yes.
Chairman Fortunato.
Yes. Okay, the next matter on is the Brigitte Bogart, the town planner, will be doing a presentation at the regular meeting, to answer any questions and to clarify the reexamination report of the master plan. So we won't do anything with regard to that now. I hope everybody had an opportunity to review the amended one that was sent out a couple hours ago. I had spoken to Brigitte and there was just some typographical errors that I had asked to be corrected. There's nothing substantively different about what she prepared, but we will discuss that at the regular meeting. And she has also prepared a resolution which only came out a few minutes ago, and I haven't even had an opportunity to look at. So when we adjourn the work session, everybody take an opportunity to look at that, and we can vote on that, review it, and vote on that at the regular meeting. So we'll deal with that at the regular meeting. And the only other matter that's on is the Galasso Enterprises matter. which is 825 Wyndham Court North, which has been adjourned until the next meeting, which is, what date in August is it, Maureen?
August 12th.
Okay, so that matter is adjourned until August 12th. If it is going to proceed on August 12th, Mr. Whitaker will be renoticing any potentially involved parties on that. So everyone will get notice of that. Is there any other items of business that need to be dealt with now before we adjourn? Not hearing any. Can I have a motion to adjourn the work session, and we'll reconvene at 8 o'clock?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Anthony and Rudy.
Anthony and Rudy. Mr. Riotto,
Yes.
Mr. Homechak,
Yes.
Mr. Fisher,
Still not on.
we lost.
I'm here.
Oh, you here, Scott?
Okay.
Okay.
He's
Back
muted.
on.
I'm here. I'm sorry. Yes.
Is Mr. Seetsma back?
I'm here.
Mr. Boonstra,
Yes.
Mr. Pervin,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandru,
Yes.
Mr. On,
Yes.
Mayor Shanley,
Yes.
Chairman Fortunato.
Yes. What we'll do is we'll reconvene at 8:05. That'll give everybody almost 10 minutes to look at the resolution that Ms. Bogart prepared. Okay?
Okay.
Very good.
See everybody then.
Great.
Thanks.
And I can't share my screen.
Maureen, this is Bob Shannon. Were you able to send another invite to the planner?
I did, but
Thank you.
you're welcome. Definitely having issues tonight with this.
Okay.
shot.
We're having technical difficulties.
I think Bridget can come over to my office and use my computer if she needs to. She's just.
She's gonna call in.
Her house is just a few doors down from my office, so if she wants to walk over, she can do that.
I just gave Rob Fortunato the call-in information. He's on the phone with her now,
Okay,
and she's gonna call in.
okay.
They're definitely having some technical problems tonight. I don't know what's going on.
The live meeting God's telling us we need to figure out how to do this live.
I am here, but I'm going to stop my video while I drive to my house. So I can hear it, but I'm like 2 minutes away.
Okay, sorry about the delay there. We're just trying to work out some technical difficulties. I know Kevin Pervin is on audio. His video is not working, or he was for a moment. Just want to make sure everybody's back. John, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
John's there. Mayor Shanley, are you there?
I'm here. I just stopped my video for a little while I drive from the Sycamore baseball field to my house.
Okay. And George Alexandru, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just not on trying to get on video still.
Okay. Glenn Seatsma, you there?
I'm here, but only on audio, no video.
Okay. And Scott Fisher, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Same video is out, but I have audio.
Okay, great. Okay, so let me read the announcements and then we'll get into it. I know Brigitte Bogart is on her way to Rob Landel's office, so by the time she'll probably be there. All right. Hey, got the beep in the background. Can you mute yourself, please? The July 8th, 2020 public meeting of the Wyckoff Planning Board is now in session. In The Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting appears on our annual schedule of meetings. Copy of said annual schedule has been posted on the bulletin board in Memorial Town Hall. Copy has been filed with the Township Clerk, the Record, the Ridgewood News, and the North Jersey Herald and News. All newspapers are general circulation in the Township of Wyckoff. At least 48 hours prior to this meeting, the agenda thereof was similarly posted, filed, and mailed to said newspapers. Okay, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Actually, yeah, well, let's stand and then we'll have a roll call.
Very nice.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America.
and to the republic,
To the republic which it stands,
one
one nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible.
liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Maureen, can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Riato,
Here.
Mr. Homicak,
Here.
Mr. Fisher,
Here,
Mr. Sietsma,
Here.
Mr. Boonstra,
Here.
Mr. Alexandru,
Here,
Mr. On,
Here.
Mr. Pervin,
Here.
Mayor Shanley,
Yes.
Chairman Fortunato.
Here. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Okay, thanks for everybody coming out. I know we're having some difficulties. If anybody does have any difficulty with audio or something, they can text me at my cell phone, which is 201-819-1626, just to let me know if you dropped off, and we'll try to get you back on. Hopefully that won't be an issue. We can always give you a call-in number in case you can't get in on Zoom. Okay, at the work session, the board approved the June 10th, 2020 work session and regular business minutes. The Kale resolution was passed as well, which is delayed the enforcement of the prior resolution denying Mr. Kale's application for 60 days to allow him to file a different application if he so chooses. That was passed. I recused myself from that vote, but it was passed otherwise. Ordinance number 1917, which had to do with change in parking requirements, was recommended by the board to the council. There was a vote taken and approved. And the Galasso Enterprises matter, which is 825 Wyndham Court North, has been adjourned until the August meeting. Mr. Whitaker, as he's stated on several occasions in the past, will be making if it does proceed, if he intends to proceed in August, he will be sending notices out to all interested parties. So we'll be aware when it comes up. And the only other item that remains is the reexamination report for the master plan. And Brigitte Bogart is going to be coming on. She had prepared the reexamination report, and at my request, she made just some typographical changes, nothing substantive changed. And that was sent out a couple hours ago. I assume everybody got that and had a chance to review it. And then if Brigitte is available, Mr. Landell, is Brigitte at your office?
My understanding is she's walking over now.
Oh, she's in the prop. Okay. All right. So we'll give her a few moments. I did speak to her and she said she was on her way. So we'll give her a few moments and then she will give us a rundown of the reexamination report, and we'll have an opportunity to ask her any questions. And then there's also a resolution. Everybody can print out the resolution that came out just recently in that regard. Has anybody not had the opportunity to print that out and review it?
Yeah, there's some typos in there.
Yeah.
Rob, could you, while we have time, could you explain to us what this is, what exactly we're doing the re-examination report for, what the purpose of this is, and sort of give us or me sort of a general understanding of what this report is meant for?
I can do that, and then Bob Shannon or Rob Landell can supplement everything I say. Every 10 years under the municipal land use law, there has to be well, initially there's a master plan that's voted on and approved. That was done years and years ago, but every 10 years there has to be, at the most, there has to be a reexamination of it, and any proposed changes need to be incorporated and it needs to be voted on. If it's not within the 10-year period, then you essentially no longer have a master plan in place. That's my understanding.
Okay, so this is a formality of keeping our master plan relevant.
To a certain extent, but there are also suggestions based on the current circumstances in the township now. So it's not simply an approval of the old one. There are also recommendations in there with regard to present circumstances.
And so what happens to these recommendations?
Well, we're going to discuss that when Projet does the presentation. You want to supplement that at all?
Rob, if we have a few minutes here, if I can chime in,
Yeah, go ahead.
kind of a roadmap, also for things that could be accomplished. In here was mentioned the acquisition of Maple Lake, which we've kind of accomplished, or we're in the process. Also Russell Farms. They talk about sewering. Now they talk about doing it privately. We were able to do quite a bit of sewering with in cooperation with the Northwest Bergen Sewer Authority. It wasn't all private money. There was some township money involved. So it's kind of a guideline as to what we would like to accomplish in the coming decade. And in the past decade, we actually, I don't want to say we did pretty well, but we accomplished some things. We really did. That was laid out 10 years ago. So.
One of the
clearly worth doing. It's clearly worth doing.
One of the
recommendations, the fact that the legal requirement
with regard to the parking, which we read the ordinance that we reviewed at the work session, directly addresses that. So
correct. That's part of it.
Okay. Before I turn it over to Ms. Bogart, you have anything else, Rudy?
No, I was just filling a little time with that, Rob. That's all.
Okay. So I see Jeff Bogart is here. Thanks for making it over. And so we're going to turn it over to you. Bogart is the planner for the Township of Wyckoff. So she prepared the document and she's going to do a presentation on it, and then we'll have an opportunity to ask your questions. Go ahead. Thank you.
So what we had to do and accomplish by mid-July is adopt this master plan examination report. And it's sort of a repetitive document because what the state law requires is that we look at all the problems that existed 2010, reevaluate them, and give updates on them. So we have to talk about those problems that existed for the last 20 years, the extent to which the problems have been reduced or increased, and any significant changes in our policies or objectives. So it's a very repetitive document, unfortunately. So I looked at the 2004 document, the 2010 document, and there were 13 issues, including traffic, mass transit. We talked a lot about in the documents about the A&P site. Obviously, that's been taken care of. Communication towers, recreation opportunities, acquiring different properties, bikeways, sidewalk improvements, office development, sewage, to zoning, and the Triangle Central Business District were huge issues. So then in 2010, I guess there was a ad hoc committee that was created to address some of these issues. So what I did was take the committee's goals and objectives and include them in this document. Most of the stuff has been addressed. In 2004, there was an ordinance 1477, which revised, and Mr. Shannon can tell you, revised the permitted uses in the light industrial district, revised some of the parking requirements, addressed some of the issues that were in the 2004 document. So with all that being said, what I did was just put in this document some minor issues that we might want to look at also. And those issues are, there's like 3 or 4 of them. One, address parking requirements. I think they're still very conservative at this point in time. 2, addressing the permitted uses. Because what happens in our zoning code right now is that it's so detailed that it's very hard for tenants to come into a building without having to go through the whole development process. So parking requirements, permitted uses. The third thing was the cellular tower ordinance needs to be updated to today's standards. And there's a recommendation in there to have an ordinance to address the DAS system, DAS, which is like the mini cell towers. So those are the major issues. We've addressed affordable housing. I've updated our open space requirements. I talked to the recreation committee and I have a whole number of goals there. And that's basically the document as a whole. If you want me to go into any detail in regard to all this, I'm more than willing to.
Bridget, can I ask you a question? I know Michael Maychek's got some questions as well, and I'm sure some of the other members do. Can you go into I know we reviewed a parking ordinance, changing the parking for personal service businesses, make it a little less restrictive, which I think is a good thing, and we recommended that to the council. Can you just go over other areas where you think it should be made more uniform or where it's overly restrictive now?
Well, so there's 2 points to the parking requirements that I think need to be addressed. One, a lot of them are overly restrictive. And then 2, the parking requirements are specific to individual uses like hair salons, nail salons, veterinary offices. Like, I think it needs to be consolidated and less restrictive.
So you're saying a general ordinance that would basically say for virtually any business, you need this number of parking spaces per square foot?
Yes. I mean, there's some minor exceptions to that. Doctor's offices obviously need more parking, but for the most part, general retail, general office, they could all be combined.
Okay.
And that's what most towns are doing. They're consolidating.
Yeah, I mean, I know if there's a parking issue and I mean, I'm a landlord, so I know this from personal experience. If a landlord has to go, or a tenant for that matter, has to go to the planning board with an application for an approval to get into a space, it sends a lot of tenants away because they don't want the time, they don't want to lose the time or expense to do that. So I think that would certainly be helpful for businesses in town. The council would look into that.
I agree 100%.
So at least the ordinance we looked at during the work session shows that they're doing that now. So
yes, yeah, I agree 100%. And I think from looking at the code, it'd be better to be more business friendly because it is expensive for a tenant to go to the board because they would have to hire an attorney, possibly a planner, and go through a couple months of the process plus application fees. So
especially in these times, I mean, it's hard enough for people to get businesses going or to keep them going, and to make them go through added time and expense. Just it'll prevent a lot of businesses from coming into town, I think, and it'll prevent landlords from being able to market their space to a lot of different types of businesses. So
yeah, I agree.
I have one more question too. With regard to the cell tower, the DAS system, the recommendation is that it be allowed. So the town is only allowed it on municipal property, and the recommendation is it be allowed to expand to possibly private property. Is that the recommendation?
Yes, but not only that, there's the new type of system that's actually mini cellular components that are on like poles and like just random like rooftops, so that you don't have the whole cell tower. It's basically just a communication system that sets up randomly within like a couple hundred feet, a couple miles, and it's less intrusive, less visually impacted to the community. I think it makes much more sense that we allow that as opposed to just the cell towers on certain properties.
Hey, Rudy and Tim, can I just ask you, was the reason why that ordinance is restrictive now is because in the past there could only be cell towers had to be very large, and is that why it was restricted to municipal property?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah, you or Mayor Shanley.
The reality of it is, it was restricted to municipal property, so the municipality could realize the income from it.
Hey, listen, it's an honest answer at least.
Well, it's the truth.
That's good to
That
hear.
could be applied to 90% of the stuff.
But do I understand now too, though, Brigitte, that I think the technology has made stuff much smaller too, so it's easier now to get it on into smaller locations.
Yes, so I wrote an ordinance for Paramus to address this issue. It's very easy to modify it for Wyckoff if that's what you want to do.
Okay.
Mrs. Bogan, I have a question. Before I lost you when you were talking about some of the permitted uses, it was going in and out, and I missed a significant amount of what you said. But I got from what you said that it was a problem how detailed the permitted uses were, as far as how it's all written up. Can you just expound upon that and why it would be a problem to be as detailed, or why it's better to be less, for that matter?
Well, again, going to the concept of being more business friendly, it's easier to say just retail uses are permitted, not identifying, okay, the antique shop, the toy store, this, because then someone that doesn't fit into those details has to go before the board and spend more money. And it also needs to be updated. Telephone booths are permitted.
And you're saying it would give us more latitude to put something that might not be listed into more of a category. I see. Okay, gotcha. Very good. So, but is it the position of usually the building department, if something is not listed as a permitted use, that it's actually prohibited? Is that what part of the problem?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's sending tenants to the board because the building department doesn't know what to do with them.
And I got to say, I read this report today, and I was extremely impressed on how succinct it was and not wordy. And I was very impressed on the report itself, and also how much of the town actually achieved. I was thinking exactly the same thing as I was reading it, saying, "Oh my God, they actually achieved this." And from and some of the other points, the DPW needs, the sewer being privately funded, actually not even a lot of it being privately funded, the open space, the ordinances preventing infrastructure. I would have liked to see, to be honest, more on bike paths and road safety as far as that goes, crosswalks, illuminated signs, slow down for pedestrians, or a general. That's what I would have liked to see more of. I don't know if you can talk to that at least.
I completely
Yeah.
can. Because I would have liked to see the same thing. I've been a resident in town for 15 years, and I do a lot of walking and running, and I have kids here. I spend a lot of time looking at the sidewalks and trying to figure out what we need to do. The problem is, because of the pandemic, we weren't allowed to meet, so I was not allowed to figure this out with a committee. But that's something that we can do after this. This document needs to be adopted, but we can amend it and literally go through this. I have pictures of sidewalks all over town where I think certain recommendations are necessary for improvements, but we don't have the time to do that right now, and obviously we can't meet. But I think that's probably an important thing to look at.
So Brigitte, this is George. Let me ask you a question. You said before there was an ad hoc committee that was put together to address the issues. Is that kind of what's going to happen now?
In 2010, there was a committee, and I think Rudy was involved in that. I don't know. But it's up to the governing body to do that.
How does that process work? This is Kevin Hanley. This is a review of what happened in the past and recommendations. How do the recommendations, if we adopt them, how do they get translated into legislation?
So there's two ways that could be accomplished. So the recommendations in this document could either be forwarded in ordinance form from the planning board to the governing body, or the governing body can take this report and say, okay, we want to implement these ordinances or plans. So there's two options.
But previously, there was a committee set up to address and look at all of these issues and start kind of figuring out what to do and what not to do. Is that what happened?
Yes.
So would that be something that we'd be looking at to do now? I mean, I certainly would hope we would do something like that, right? Considering, it is downtown and what we're,
There's a number of things to be addressed. Like I said, obviously the sidewalks, the bikeways, the parking, the permitted uses. So I don't know how the governing body will want to handle that. But what we could do as the planning board is adopt this document with a letter saying, these are the items we want to look at. Let us know if, you want us to formulate ordinances, or if you want us to come up with plans, or if you want to look at them yourself.
I'm on mute. I'm on mute.
And Bridget, just with regard to the
Hey, Brian,
good
I'm
point.
on mute, but beautiful hit.
Tim, you're not on mute.
Whoa. No, sorry.
All right. Anyway, I thought Anthony raised a good point. So, I mean, one of the recommendations, and I think the town's already addressing it, but one of the recommendations I would like to make is that I guess the parking ordinances be more generalized, and it probably would make more sense to list exceptions as opposed to specific uses, right? A catch-all, and then say with the exception of these businesses, and then a business coming in that may not fit into any of the categories now, at least wouldn't have to go maybe to the planning board or the zoning board for review, and they could get issued a certificate of occupancy simply because they fit into the broad category. Is that something that part of your recommendation?
Yes. That's in section 4 of the report.
Does anybody else, Mike, I know you had sent an email out, Mike. So before
Rob, just so I'm clear here, but because I don't we're here to adopt this and then discuss all of these things that you're talking about as amendments, correct? Like re-examine this report down the road. We're not going to sit here and start making recommendations or changes to this report based on the downtown right now tonight. I mean, that's not what we're here for.
No, so in general, the report says that we need to look at the downtown, we need to look at all these issues. We could do that down the road.
Correct. We're not going to solve those problems on a 1-hour Zoom call tonight, correct?
No.
And we're not going to make amendments to this report to address those tonight. That's not what we're here for, right?
No, but we can make amendments to the report tonight. We have 10 days to get it to the county to file it. So we can make minor amendments, but we're not going to wind up addressing all these issues.
Correct.
Yeah, we can approve it tonight. There's recommendations in there already as part of the re-examination, and then we wanted to send it back, approve it, and then with our own additional recommendations, we could certainly do that, right, Bridget?
Yes.
Correct.
You had given me a whole bunch of different edits and changes. The only one I didn't get of yours was page 10. You had something written down, and I couldn't read it.
Oh, okay. I went through your
I'm sorry, someone's phone was ringing.
I said, just so everybody knows, I had read the document and I had made some recommendations to Ms. Bogart about changes. They were typographical in nature, so they didn't substantively change anything. She had made those changes, and when I reviewed it, Bridget, they looked okay to me. So, Mike, I'll turn it over to you. I know you had a couple of questions. Oh, and before I go to that, I would love to have bike paths in town. I ride a bike. I think it'd be great. I know the limitations in town because there's just not a lot of space. The roads aren't particularly wide. So I understand the limitations in being able to do something like that. So just with regard to the bike lanes, I think that'd be great if we could conceivably do it. But Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I had some questions. I go to the ShopRite a lot and I look at people crossing over the railroad tracks to get to Main Street. I think the idea of a connection makes a lot of sense, but I don't see the need to over-engineer and go above the railroad tracks. I think it should just be a grade level, like a 5-foot wide path going through there with signage. People are crossing over the railroad tracks now, they're just walking over.
Mike, we're losing your audio.
Makes sense to have something in the middle, and it doesn't have to be that side. And the connection to Boulder Run from the ShopRite, I think that's a great idea also. They also see people walking through the bushes there to get through there at times. I also mentioned something that I've seen done in other towns, and like a walking, biking path along the railroad tracks, maybe, to go in from down by Lowlands, I think, all the way to Demorest Avenue. If we could get some right of way from the railroad, that we could build a biking, walking path there, that'd be about a mile that you could use the area, which you can use now. It's just not organized. And what else did I
So
have?
I've actually worked with New Jersey Transit before, and they allow walkways on their property. You have to be 15 feet from the rail itself, and they have to have a fence, but it can be done.
Okay.
But again, we're not here to, are we here to specifically address all of these things so that, and put them in the report? Or are we here to just approve this report and then study the report and then later specifically go over the things that we'd like to see and try and achieve them? I'm just trying to be clear to everybody so that I don't think we need to go through like, I want a bike path and we're going to sit here and talk about bike paths for 3 hours. Is that not going to, that's not going to happen.
Well, the reality of it, George, is that we're approving, we're being asked to approve the reexamination of the master plan. After this is approved, we're probably not going to come back to it unless somebody raises it. So if people have recommendations now, and I'm not saying we have to be here for 3 hours, but if some people have thoughts, it would be good to get them out now, because we have 2 members of the council here. We have Bridget Bogart, the town planner, here. So we could, as part of our approval, we could note 3 or 4 things we'd like the council to look into moving forward. I think that would.
But shouldn't we spend time to do this? You know, I'm not saying not do anything tonight, but this is a pretty big thing. I mean, shouldn't we really look into this pretty deeply and make, like Bridget said before, have some sort of committee to actually dive into all of these things
You're
to
right.
try and improve our town?
The master plan is probably one of the most important documents that the planning board could be considering.
Right. So to say that we're going to just make a couple improvements tonight and then never come back to this again,
Well,
I don't see that as acceptable.
I don't think it's not within our authority to make an ad hoc committee. That has to be done by the council, right? Rudy?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, well, George makes a good point. It would make sense because just the way things are and the way things happen to be, next month we'll have some additional items on the agenda and we probably won't come back to this. It probably would make sense if the council was willing to form an ad hoc committee that we can review. And after we pass this evening, that committee could work on some specifics.
Okay.
Rob,
Mr. Chair?
when we talk about an ad hoc committee, it's an ad hoc committee is not just planning board members.
Right.
Right. I mean, ad hoc is ad hoc of the system. We'd have to, if the township committee is going to authorize, you have to define how many members, you know, if there are different disciplines you want on the committee, et cetera, et cetera. But it is called for here, so it's possible. Sure, it's possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a recommendation here would be to actually put, I mean, if we had to put it in as part of the recommendation report, we should.
I'd like to make one comment. This is Kevin Hanley. The reexamination is hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. the reexamination report is required under the statute 40:55D-89. And it sets forth 5 areas that the reexamination report has to deal with. If you look at the table of contents that Ms. Bogart has in her report, it actually follows the statute. Major problems and objectives, the extent to which the problems and objectives have been reduced, page 12. Then the next section, 21, 26, and 27. That has us complying with the statute. Because if we don't comply with the statute, the next section, 55D-89.1, provides that the absence of adoption by the planning board of the reexamination report shall constitute a rebuttable presumption that the municipal development regulations are no longer reasonable. We don't want to be in that situation. So
we should adopt, we should definitely be doing this as a matter of form, right? And adapting this now, but not thinking we're going to make substantive changes to it and start looking into minutia not minutia, but details about what we're going to actually do, right? That's what I said from the beginning.
Well, the question is the report needs to be adopted tonight. Otherwise, we find it without a master plan in place. The question is based on the recommendations that Ms. Bogart makes in the report, does it justify having a committee that would look specifically into these issues? And I guess that's an issue for the council. The issues that seem to be of most importance based on what Bogart has said and what's in the report are the parking issues, okay, which the town is at least addressing. They've addressed with this most recent ordinance. And maybe there needs to be clarification moving forward on some of the other parking ordinances so that it's more friendly to business. A lot of the other objectives were achieved. That is not to say that there aren't things to be done, but I guess I would leave that up to Mayor Shanley and Rudy to say what they think about that and if they think that would be helpful to the council, or if they think it would be, might it be, just too cumbersome? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Rudy?
Rob, my screen was frozen. I missed about 2/3 of what you said. Sorry.
Oh, what I said was just to recap briefly, the recommendations that are in the report. The question is, a lot of it has to do with parking, some of which you guys are already addressing with the most recent ordinance, and with these cell tower systems. Those seem to be the main areas, and maybe some paths, whether there can be walking paths or bike paths. The question is do you and Mayor Shanley think it would be helpful to have a committee moving forward, an ad hoc committee consisting of planning board members, zoning board members, and other people you would appoint? Or do you think it would be more cumbersome than it would be worth based on what the recommendations are here? What is your feeling on that?
Off the top of my head here, just to react to that, if the governing body hadn't made any progress on what was set forth here 10 years ago, I would say maybe that is a good idea. But the fact of the matter is, we have made progress, considerable progress, on a number of items. I mean, we've established the Historic Preservation Commission, which is in here. We've purchased more open space. We've made progress on sewers. There are other things. So if we were just ignoring this and not doing any of it, that might be something I would be more in favor of. But having said that, I'm opposed to it. You just have to be careful with ad hoc committees. That's all, because they want to do more than what is reasonably prudent to do in a period of time. It's just my thoughts, Rob. By the way, speaking of walking paths, I had 2 quick things here. On page 6, where we're talking about walking paths, Jet, do we need to make a note of the new walking path we're proposing around the municipal building that'll connect directly the grade crossing at Franklin by the railroad in a diagonal way to the upper end of the ball field in the rear of Town Hall, so people don't have to walk through all the parking lots to get there?
Yes, we should. I'm not aware of that plan, though.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
it's pretty much being constructed by the DPW. It's going
Yeah.
to connect the knolls basically to Franklin Ave without having to
Yeah.
walk through the parking lot.
Yeah, it's gonna go on a diagonal, like from where the police department is, down the lawn, and connect to the sidewalk by the railroad grade crossing. The other question I had, and this is a de minimis change, but maybe not so de minimis. On page 11, 5C, that would require green building materials. Is that something we really want to do, or should we promote green building materials? I would think that if that was required, that might have a negative effect on people who were thinking of building, building Wyckoff.
You're 100% correct, and I talked to the administrator about this because in 2010, the report says require green building materials and require something else, and I don't think that's legal. So what I did was later on in the report, when it says there's changes of policies and objectives, I changed it to say that we just want to encourage that.
Okay, encouragement. Okay.
That
that's
the
fine.
requirement language is from 2010.
Yeah, it does say encourage.
And could I jump in on that point, Rudy? I used to actually be a consultant in the sustainability world. And I agree with you. I don't think we should be requiring green materials. If anything, it should be kind of technical performance criteria or standards, and just referring back to those items so that we're not making things up as a township as we're going along. So I concur with what you're saying. We absolutely should not just say require green technologies and building materials.
We ought to fix that then.
And I think, Rudy,
Thanks,
from my previous experience on the Environmental Commission, I know there was some contact between the Environmental Commission and the Building Department about trying to get flyers or something in with applications to make people aware of different green materials and all. There wasn't going to be any requirement, but so that people were aware of different green sources they could go to for materials and things like that. So I think there's been some progress on that in the last couple of years as well, as far as promotion of those.
The one thing that I've done in other municipalities is if someone's willing to do green materials or anything environmentally friendly, there's two towns actually that I worked in that we gave them we gave residents a bonus for additional impervious coverage or additional side yard setbacks if they were doing the green materials. So it was kind of an encouragement to do that, but I don't think you can actually require it.
It's an interesting idea.
Could I chime in with just some thoughts? And again, I think I understand exactly what George is saying, that we're not here to, open up new cans of worms, but I do want to bring some things up onto the agenda. One, I do agree that connecting the central business district would be great, and to try to create a lively pedestrian downtown that residents actually like to walk to. People talk about walking to downtown, but right now it's kind of not there. So I definitely agree with that. Just a couple comments that I have as we're working on this. We're a small town. Wyckoff seems to have a lot of banks. And there's even one more that's popping up right across the street from Town Hall. I know we can't dictate what kind of businesses come in and don't come in, but it seems like we have enough banks in our town, and so if that's something that we can think about, that I just want to kind of put that out there. Shops like coffee shops, and not Starbucks, but kind of a boutique coffee shop. Again, just throwing that out there as an idea. And then the third point is some sort of a municipal pool. I know we have Spring Lake, but again, long-term planning, if there was some sort of a municipal pool or something along the lines that we could work towards. Again, that sounds like something that a lot of people in the township would appreciate. That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Anybody else have any comments or want to put their recommendations on the record?
Can I just mention one other thing in that email that I think is pretty important? We have a lot of soil movement applications that come before the planning board. And I'd like to see us have an ordinance that requires testing of the soil. What we've done, normally the applicant volunteers it. We can make it part of the requirement. There's a simple resolution. I sent you the link that believe it or not, the New Jersey EPA is pushing that we could actually require as part of the soil movement application a soil test of the soil. That to me, I think would be easier than waiting for a meeting to ask for it all the time. That's the only one that I think is a requirement.
I think that's a good point. That would be fairly easy to do. It would take it out of our hands. And when it came, by doing that, when it came to, well, actually, I guess in either case, Mike, the soil testing wouldn't be done until after the approval anyway, unless you have a case like Mr. Kale where the soil's moved before it comes to us. So I don't know if
that's true.
I don't know if that would necessarily change anything, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to have that in the ordinance.
Okay.
You agree with that, Rudy?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Or maybe that's something the council could look at as well.
I mean, that's something we can look at, not necessarily the master plan review. I mean, that's just a matter of addressing the ordinance.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, to me, it's an amazing thing. The state EPA recommends it, but there is no state law that requires it. Each town has to have a local ordinance to require a soil test. So if you follow that link, you'll see a sample resolution. Right.
Okay. Anybody else? I guess the process would be to vote. Well, you have a resolution there too, Bridget. Do we need 2 votes here, or do we need just to vote? I mean, assuming, I guess we'd need a vote to approve it, and then we'd have to go to the resolution separately. So we probably need 2 votes. That's probably the way to handle it. So,
Did Mr. Hanley get my draft resolution?
I printed it out. We can go over that. There's some corrections in the spelling that needs to be made from when I looked at it. But I think did everybody else have an opportunity to look at that during the break?
Yeah. Other than typos, it looked good.
Okay. Anybody not have a chance to look at that? Okay. I guess before we vote on this, we should open it up to the public in case there's anybody online who wants to comment.
Also, before you do, on the acknowledgements, you might just want to check to make sure your list of planning board members is complete. I see my name is not in there, and I'm not sure if anybody else is missing there, or maybe somebody's in there that's not supposed to be.
I took it off the website, so maybe, Maureen, can you give me an updated list? Okay.
I think the only one missing from there is Anthony, because he was recently appointed, right?
I didn't do it on purpose, I promise, Anthony.
Won't be able to sleep tonight, Bridget.
Anthony, he'd like his name in capital letters too, please.
And I'll bold it.
And I think you should acknowledge that Kevin Pervin is the vice chair. Also, not just a board member.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Kevin's a vice chair.
Is Sarah officially resigned? Is that where she is right now, or is she officially still on board?
As of tonight, she's still on board. We'll have to address that between now and the next meeting.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a good point. Kevin is vice chair, and Kevin Hanley's on there as the attorney. Okay. Okay. Anything else before we? Can I have a motion to open this to the public, please? Motion open to the public?
So moved.
That was Rudy, and who seconded that?
Kevin Perman.
Okay. Any objection, rather than taking a formal vote, any objection to opening to the public? Okay, is there anybody any members of the public there, to your knowledge, Maureen?
No, nobody called in.
Okay, I'm just gonna make an announcement now. We'll give 30 seconds if anybody does want to call in to comment on anything we've dealt with, either at the work session or at the business meeting, to please do so in the next 30 seconds, or otherwise we will close to public comment. Just give it a second, Maureen. And I say that because I know we've had technical difficulties, so.
Do you need to state the phone number?
Maybe that's a good idea. Do you have that, Maureen? We can announce that?
Well, it's the phone number, then it's also the webinar ID, participant ID, and the password. So if you want me to announce those, I can do that.
Well, why don't you announce it? We'll give a minute if in case anybody wants to contact us, and then we can do the formal vote, and then we can go into the resolution as well.
Okay, so if any members of the public would like to phone in, the phone number is 1-929-205-6099. The webinar, it'll prompt you for the webinar ID, which is 840-2366-2339. And then you'll be prompted for a participant ID, which is 143028. And the password is 431682.
All right, thanks, Maureen. I'm showing 8:58 on my clock. Why don't we just, we'll keep the meeting open, but why don't we just take a 2-minute break, and then to see if anybody calls it, and then we can have a vote.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just have a question. Rudy had mentioned the pathway between over the railroad tracks, and there's obviously a plan for the DPW. Does somebody have a copy of that plan that I can look at so I can include into the report?
Scotty, do you have something that we can share with Bridget on that? Scott Fisher still with us?
No, I don't see him.
He's muted.
Yeah, I'm here.
Scotty, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Scotty, do we have something we could share with Bridget regarding the that diagonal walkway that you're planning to construct down to the railroad crossing on Franklin?
Yeah, I mean, we can give her a layout, that she can incorporate into the plan.
Okay, I just want to get an idea of exactly where it goes.
Right. We can follow up on that tomorrow, Bridget.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Scotty.
Okay.
I'll just give it one more minute. All right, I'm showing 9 o'clock. I assume no one's called in, Maureen?
No.
Okay. All right, so we'll resume. Can I have just a motion to close it to the public then, please?
So moved.
Second.
Rudy, and who was the second on that?
Tim.
That was me.
Tim.
Tim.
Here's Shannon. Okay, any objection to closing to the public rather than taking a formal vote? No?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we want to have a motion to approve the 2020 Master Plan Reexamination Report as as amended, the first amendment that was submitted. So not the original that was submitted several days ago, but the one that was submitted today with the typographical correction.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just wanted to, I don't think I was sworn in before I presented. I think maybe swear me in now, and then I could certify to the fact that everything I presented was.
Okay, sure. Do you want to give her an oath, Mr. Hanley?
Yes. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And Ms. Bogart, you've had an opportunity to speak before you were sworn here tonight. Is everything that you said at this meeting prior to being sworn in true and accurate to the best of your knowledge? And do you swear to the truth of it at this time?
I do.
That's sufficient, Mr. Hanley?
That should be sufficient, yes.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the reexamination report with the recommendations as contained therein, and I guess subject to the amendment for the path. The path is between where?
It's between the rear of Town Hall and the grade crossing on Franklin Ave by the railroad tracks, where the traffic signals now are.
Okay, so Ms. Bogart will be getting something from Mr. Fisher on that, and she'll incorporate that into the plan. And then with the understanding that the council will do what they can to address the issues, the remaining issues and the recommendations, and that if they feel it necessary moving forward, that members of this board would certainly make themselves available for any committee that the council may feel necessary to create.
That's great.
Anybody else have anything to add to that at this moment? If not, can I have a motion to approve, subject to what I just
So
said?
moved as the chairman just stated, Mike.
Mike Homachek, and a second. Second from Anthony.
Glenn,
Yes.
that was you?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Mr. Riato,
Yes.
Mr. Homachek? Mike?
I think he's frozen.
Yeah. Mike, can you
Mr. Fish,
come back?
Yes.
I'll come back to him.
Yes.
Mis-
Oh,
Mr.
I said yes.
Siema? Okay, thanks, Mike. Mr. Siema,
Yes.
Mr. Boonstra,
Yes.
Mr. Pervin,
Yes.
Mr. An,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandru,
Yes.
Mayor Shan,
Yes.
Chairman Fortunato.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to the resolution. Ms. Bogart prepared. Everybody's acknowledged they had an opportunity to view that. Just the substance of the resolution. Well, we can go through. Does anybody have any comments on the substance of the resolution? I know there's some typographicals that we got to go through with. We have to discuss. Substantively, though, does anybody have an objection, or does anybody think anything needs to be added to the resolution that was prepared by Ms. Bogart? To generally incorporate what we went over. And I guess, Mr. Hanley, so this is the only resolution that we're going to need then, right? Bridget, is that?
That would be it. It's going to need signature lines.
It's going to need signature lines, but we don't need another. We voted on the approval, and then we're going to vote on the resolution, and the resolution will be signed. Okay, right. Okay. All right. So just in looking at this briefly, people may have other things they could hop in. In the third whereas a reexamination must state at least 5 specified elements with regard to the master plan, such as problems and objectives. I guess that as they relate to land development as opposed to relates should be in there.
Mr. Hanley, are you going to take care of the edits, or do you want me to address that?
Well, you probably have it on Word, right, Bridget? You want to take care of them, and I mean, we can pass it subject to the changes, and then when it's presented for signature, it'll just be the amended copy.
Okay.
You
Would
able-
it be easier to just email me the changes?
Well, I think we have to put them on the record now when we vote on it.
Okay.
So that was the first one. Then in the next paragraph, the next whereas, the third line down, perform, it's PRE, it should be PER.
Okay.
I'll put them on the record, Bridget, and then I'll email this to you tomorrow. So
Perfect. That's better.
in the next whereas section, 2000, it says 202, it should be 2020. The next whereas section should be in line 2, find should be fines with an S. And then in paragraph 2 at the bottom, notice of, the O is missing in the of, and the next line down should be properly as opposed to property. Does anybody else notice anything else on the first page?
You mean on this, oh, on the first page now.
Yeah, we'll go to the second page in a minute. There's a couple of others there. Okay, I'll move to the second page. If anybody sees anything on the first, let me know. In bullet point 2, by certified mail to, there's a 4 in the clerks there. It's just got to be removed. The next line down, it says mailed at least, does this have to be 10 days, Bridget? It says 4 and then it says 10.
10.
He's 10, yeah.
10 days? I thought so. So the 4 will need to be removed.
10 days.
And it should, where 4 is, should be a T at least.
Yeah.
And
Correct. Okay. That's misspelled. And then going down after the resolved is misspelled in the now therefore be it resolved. Needs to be an S there. And then in number 1 below that in the second line updated, there's a 6 where the E should be. So that's just got to be spelled. It's got to be corrected.
there's a spacing error in paragraph 1. After July 8, 2020, it should be space is hereby adopted.
Okay.
What was that, Ken?
Oh,
yeah.
Therefore be it resolved, second line of paragraph 1, just a space after 2020 and before it is.
Right. And actually in the first line of that, just above that, 2020 is 20120, so that'll be corrected too. And then adoption in the second, looks like there's an unhappy
An emoji.
face at the end of adoption. So we'll remove that.
You don't want an emoji in your resolution?
At least make it a smiley face, right? Okay, anybody else notice anything else?
You got it all?
Just to be consistent, the A, B, and C, they're A and B are in lowercase, so C should probably be lowercase.
Okay.
Where's that, Kev?
Number 2, subsections A, B.
Oh, yes, okay, that's a good point too, okay. That'll be lowercase c.
Got it.
And there's a, as adopted, and it says on the bottom line, and this resolution.
And two ands are in there, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Bridget, I'll get this to you. I'm gonna be out of the office most of tomorrow, but if I don't get it to you tomorrow, I'll get it to you Friday.
Okay, I think I got all of it, but send it to me.
Okay. Okay, subject to those amendments, if there's no other objection, can I have a motion to approve the planning board resolution as amended?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution dated June 28th, 2020, prepared by Bridget Bogart.
I'll second that, Mike.
Mr. Iato,
Yes.
Mr. Homechak,
Yes.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Sietsma,
Yes.
Mr. Boonstra,
Yes.
Mr. Pervin,
Yes.
Mr. On,
Yes.
Mr. Alexandru,
Yes.
Mayor Shanley,
Yes.
Chairman Fortunato.
Yes. Before we close out the meeting, Maureen, can you just verify that nobody else is on the line from the public?
The only two people that are called in are me and Glenn. Those two little phones that you see there. Other than that, there's nobody on the line.
Okay. I'm going to open it up to the public for 30 seconds in case anybody calls in. We should have done this before we voted on the resolution, but I don't think anybody's on the line anyway. But
There's
just
no one on.
in case anybody wants to call in, we'll give them 30 seconds and then we will wind up the meeting.
And the, as Bob Shannon says, the resolution is to be dated today. Okay, with the signature lines.
So
There'll be a signature line for the Secretary Maureen and for the chairman.
Yeah.
I'm going to update the report with today's date with the revisions we discussed.
Yeah.
I assume no one's called in, right, Maureen?
Correct.
Okay. So we will close the public session and there's no other business to address. I'd ask for a motion. Thanks everybody for coming on. It's been difficult circumstances with the audio and the video tonight. Thanks, Bob Shannon, for all the work you did on this. And Brigitte, I know you did a lot of work on short notice on this. We appreciate that, getting this done. And thanks to all the board members. That being said, can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Who seconded it?
Rudy.
Rudy,
Rudy? Okay.
are we having a vote?
Yeah, let's vote on it.
Mr. Iato,
Yes.
Mr. Homicek,
Yes.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes.
Ms. Eastman,
Yes.
Mr. Boonstra,
Yes.
Mr. Pervin,
Yes.
Mr. On,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mayor Shanley,
Yes.
Chairman Fortunato.
Yes. Okay, everybody, have a great night, okay?
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Well,